Welcome to Money Making Conversation. I am your host, Rashawn McDonald. It is time to stop reading other people's success stories and stop writing your own. That's why I have people like Dee and Willie on my show today. They have success stories that will motivate you, but it's their stories. And it can offer you direction and help you reach your goals. But it's your planning and your committed effort that's going to get you to your goals. That's why my interviews provide you, being you're the consumer and the business owner, access to these celebrities and CEOs and entrepreneurs and industry decision makers, because they truly are two industry decision makers. My guests are Dr. Willie Jolley and Dee Taylor-Jolley. They are the authors of the Make Love, Make Money, Make It Last book, 10 Secrets to the Shape of Great Marriage. Please welcome to Money Making Conversation, the world-renowned Hall of Fame speaker and best-selling author, Dr. Willie Jolley, and the C.O.O. of Willie Jolley Worldwide, Dee Taylor-Jolley. How y'all doing?
Man, we are blessed and grateful and glad to have you as my friend for all these years. And we are honored to be able to be on with you and honored to be able to share some ideas with your audience that hopefully will empower, inspire, and bless their relationships and their marriages.
Well, first of all, I got to go to Dee first, because I read the book, because I knew Dee had swag when she had a 280Z, Datsun 280Z. I said, okay now, because that was the car to have, Willie. A Datsun 280Z, you had to have a little money in your bank. You had to have a little flair. Boy, girl, hey, Willie, you couldn't tell her nothing when she had that Datsun 280Z, could you?
You're right. You're absolutely right.
And you drove it into the ground.
I got hold of it. And that's true love.
Absolutely.
She had the fancy sports car, and when I got married to her, I started driving it, and I just drove it into the ground.
Absolutely.
You're absolutely right.
Well, you
she
were looking good.
And class and style. And
oh man,
I was trying to
Datsun 280Z. What color was it, Dee? What color was it?
It was persimmon.
A special order.
For red.
I took a lot of fun. That's why I wanted to start off with talking about some of the things that I felt were engaging about your book or personal about the book. Because when you write a book like that, it has to be honest. And sometimes telling your story, it takes moments because as you keep writing a book, you start, let me add this, or you start remembering a part of a story that you actually forgot that becomes an important part of the book. And sitting down as a couple, because I love what it says, what Willie says, what Dee says. So each one of you as a couple saw things differently, but worked as a unit to succeed, correct?
Yes.
Absolutely. You're right. And which was one of the challenges. I've written a number of books.
Right.
Many of them global bestsellers. It only takes a minute, change your life. A setback is a setup for a comeback. Turn setbacks into greenbacks. An attitude of excellence. Chicken soup for the Christian soul. But writing one with my wife was really difficult because she typically has been my editor of all my books. And so when we went to write this one, it was challenging because
I have my own voice.
Right.
And I had to remember that I had my own voice and that I was not simply editing what he said.
That's right. So we struggled for a little while till we figured out our speed and how this was going to work. And then we would look at the 10 principles that we had developed over these 36 years. Well, at that point, it was about 33 years when we wrote the book or so. And then once we got the principles lined up, we said, okay, I will write my part or my take on it. She'll write her take. And that's when it really found magic. Now, one other thing. When we wrote the book, we've been married for 36 years. Haven't had an argument in over 33 years. Now, those first couple of years were like World War III.
Right,
but
absolutely.
we learned some principles that helped us stop arguing and get to loving each other. Right. And I thought we were done.
She's staring at you. She's staring at you, Willie. She's staring at you while you're talking. Now, I don't know if all that's working in the direction. The book is Willie says and Dee says. I think that was a Dee says stare she was giving you.
She wanted to say about the fact how we got the principle, but we had to then embrace it. Go ahead, baby.
I'm a former school teacher too.
Absolutely.
So the nonverbal communication, but embracing versus actually implementing are two different things.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we had mentors, we had information, but we had to decide that we wanted to do this and that we wanted to work through it together.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that the most difficult part of the development of our relationship is actually how we communicate.
Right.
Because Willie speaks for a living and he writes books and the like.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it can be overpowering until you pull back and say, let's wait a minute now. Here's what I have to say. Mm-hmm. And this is how I need you to communicate with me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that came to a head over the Chinese food.
Yeah. Right. The biggest challenge to our marriage came one night at a Chinese restaurant where we carry out where we almost broke up. Right. And it's one of the biggest points in our marriage. And we talk about there are three boulders that break up marriage: sex, money, and communication.
Absolutely. And
communication is the thread that weaves through all of those. Right. And we almost came to end of our marriage over Chinese food. And what basically happened was her family was coming to visit. I
wanted to impress my brother.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because I had moved to DC. I'm a nice little Southern girl from Hampton, Virginia. My father was a pastor and the like. And I wanted to simply impress my brother and his wife that we were doing okay, that we were doing well.
And he said, I said, what do y'all want for dinner? He said, how about Chinese? Y'all got good Chinese restaurants, and they don't have a lot of Chinese restaurants in the city where she's from, and a southern city. I said, gotcha. I'm a Chinese food aficionado. I'm an expert on Chinese food. Right. You know all the spots. Yeah. Now,
she said you like sushi. She had to be educated in the sushi with you, okay?
That's
so I know.
Right. You got it.
Right.
You read it. You got it.
Read it.
Yeah.
I also know that you're an introvert as well, so you can keep going. You keep going.
So we got to the restaurant. I told her, here's what we need. She said, no, we need more. I said, no, this is all we need. No, we need more.
Right.
And
he was cheap.
I'm cheap. Okay, I'm cheap. I'm well known for being extravagant and frugal. I'll make $1 holla. Okay. Right. I said, here's what we need. And I got loud. I got loud.
Totally unacceptable behavior for him to get loud with me.
Right. And so it got louder, more intense. And finally I was fever pitch. I was hollering. And she said, I will leave you. Married folks, here's a word I want you to learn. Dial it back. Little phrase. Dial it back. I said, dial it back, dial the value
back. And he ordered everything that I thought we should have.
Right.
Went home, had the dinner. The end of the night, after everybody eating.
We had leftovers.
How much? A lot.
A lot. He doesn't like having Chinese leftovers because he says they're not good the next day.
If you're an aficionado.
But he was right.
Right.
It was too much.
And so when they left, we said, let's talk.
No, you said.
I said, let's talk.
We have to have a conversation. Yeah. Which was a very wise thing on his part.
I said, we need to talk about this. And she said very clearly, I don't like anybody.
I'm a daddy's girl.
Right.
My daddy, fire brimstone minister.
Right.
Never raised his voice to me.
Right.
Always sweet, loving, kind. My brother and I always
and you with this big time talker. This big time talker over here. He talks to thousands. That's Willie. He a big time talker, right? You know, you're PK. Big time talker, PK. At the restaurant, he became big time talker. PK going. Miss Introvert stepped up her game.
There you go. And so I said, and she said, I don't like people hollering at me. And I said, got it.
There you go.
And now that I got yours, let me tell you mine. I don't like people threatening to leave me.
Right.
And don't threaten me. And so we made an agreement. I said, I will never holler at you again. And she said, I'll never threaten to leave you. And that's been over 33 years. We haven't had an argument since. We don't always agree.
Right.
But we've learned how to have systems that will help us to disagree without being disagreeable.
And that's a chapter in the book.
That's a chapter.
How to disagree without being disagreeable. There really is a difference.
But also, Dee, isn't it also being
at.
disrespectful too? In that part right there, which I like about the book is that, it's all about communication. When you said it earlier, Willie, because that really communication and money, communication in bed, communication with your kids, communication when you work, all that. If you don't communicate, and that was my biggest takeaway from this whole book was that you guys have mastered the art of communication. And that's what you're telling everybody. If you don't communicate, you can be two different people. And I love when you talk about, he liked this type of food. I wasn't a sushi lover. I had to be brought onto that side of the table. And then when you got to the whole part about his daughter, Sherry, that's the part where I had the most fun in the book because, Dee, I didn't know you, but it is so vivid. It is so colorful. You driving at 5 hours to pick up his daughter and you wasn't 100% in the club of going to back get it. Like you said, the ex-wife made her bed, as you said, sleep in it.
There you go.
Blended families, it can be very challenging and marriages where you're blending up families. She had been married before I had a child, before I got married, and we had to blend all of this. And it was very challenging. But again, it was the communication.
Right.
It was the wise counsel of my mom.
A mentor.
Uh-huh.
When I called her and said what Willie was going to do,
right.
He was going to go pick up Sherry. I'm like, the house is calm. Everybody gets along well. Why are you doing this? And my mother said to me.
I'll tell you what she said. She said, this is what your mama said. You want to be married to a man that wants to be responsible to the children that he brought into this world. That's what your mama told you. Why wouldn't you want a man like that? Why wouldn't you respect a man like that? Why you wouldn't love a man like that? That's what your mama said in this book that I read.
Yes.
You read that. That was her mama. And let me tell you something. It was the key because her mother made the difference. Mm-hmm. And so, that communication, look, the communication chapter is probably the biggest chapter in the book. And we give that away free to everybody. We want to give it to all your listeners, all the people who are viewing it. Go to jollymarriage.com. Jollymarriage.com. Get the free chapter from that book. It will bless you. And if you choose to get the book, we recommend you get 2 copies, one for each of you. We've had so many couples who were on their way to divorce court who said, we're going to try one more time. They got 2 copies. And at the end of each chapter, they would talk about what they learned. And we've had so many called afterwards. And one particular called and said, we've been married 15 years and we are not only not divorcing, but when we got to the end, we closed the book and we cried together because we realized we really didn't know much about each other. Right. So we want to give that away, jollymarriage.com. Then we talk about sex, money,
chapter
and
8. That's chapter 8.
Sex.
Chapter 8. Chapter 8 now. I know about that chapter now. Okay,
that chapter, the hot chapter.
Now, I think because it's titled Sex, Headaches, and Other Lies, it gets a lot of attention, but sex is not just intercourse.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It is the intimacy which women need more so than the man, and it takes us along the road to ending up with sex, the intercourse.
Right.
But women need the words. They need the roses. They need the tenderness. Poor Rose. They need the sweet talk.
Look at him. Look at him. You too much, Willie. You too much. But you know something?
Which makes me want to be close to him.
The thing about it is that
oftentimes we forget that.
Right.
Within all of the confusion and chaos, including the pandemic, we forget kind words, something tender. It actually draws the woman in and helps develop romance.
Right. And I tell brothers, look, brothers, if you want some action at night, you need to start working on it in the morning.
Thank you very much.
You need to start working on it in the morning. I take her a smoothie in the morning or a cup of coffee when she's at her desk. I send her a little text from my office to her after. You sure look good.
We're across the hall from each other.
Yeah, I say, you sure look good today. Little things make a big difference. And it will work better for you, gentlemen, if you do it in that process, not just coming at the last minute at night going, You ready? You ready?
Right.
Now that don't work. That don't work in this world. You got to be more thoughtful and caring and tender.
Okay,
It make a world of difference in your love life.
A little kiss.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm gonna tell y'all something. Would y'all stop it? I'm trying to interview you, y'all. I got this. I read the book. I know y'all love. I know this about communication. There's some people that need y'all help. There's some people that need y'all help. Willie, Dee, stop it. Okay, now, let's talk about communication because I want to go back a little bit to the Sherry situation because that was important because it was about communication because it was one person accepting another young lady who was hostile because she didn't know. You know, the mom threw her hands up after she drunk. Because I always remember it was a very similar situation with my older sister. We moved her daughter in, and we set rules. And then 6 months later, she made the phone call. They treat me like I'm in prison. They won't let me go out. They won't. And then, of course, the sister came, got her. And I always regret that I didn't put up a bigger fight because I felt that she would have lived a different life if she would have been with us. And then, but you had to change. That's the adjustment in communication. You know, we could joke around about the love, but it's the communication and accepting situations that you may not be comfortable with. And that's really what I took away when I read about the situation with Sherry. Dee, you were not comfortable. And also, Willie, you were not comfortable because you had to mediate two people you love, but also had to have discipline. And then Dee, you had to admit, you had to accept some of the rulings that he put in place to make this thing work. So there was acceptance, there was a communication, and also accepting the ability to feel uncomfortable for the bigger goal. That was the most amazing part of the book for me because I took away so many different levels.
Wow.
That's great insight. And I think that you have to be willing to accept your own limitations and really who you are.
Right.
Because if I had not been willing to say, I'm doing this because I believe in Willie.
Right.
I married him. I don't agree. We talked about that because he's my best friend.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But the whole idea, I got to do all I can to save my daughter. I had to be on board, which meant I had to do the right thing, whether I felt it or not. And that, I think, is so major. Many of us blended families, we get caught up in the emotions. And so we get carried away to the wrong things. We know the right things to do. We must do the right things. And then gradually the emotions come in and the situation changes. Hopefully.
Right. And we talk about that in this chapter called How to Handle a Stalemate.
Yes.
And it is a great object lesson on when you have two people who have opposite decisions.
And that's something that we decided on before we got married. Really, we had already talked about that in terms of this is not really 50-50. It's 51-49. That might not be a popular position today. But you can't have you could have a two-headed monster, but then you got a monster. So how do we work through this?
We worked through it by deciding early on. I said to her, look, you run everything. Run the house, run the business. All I want you to do is to make me think I'm in charge.
I thought that was such a wise statement on the part of this young man.
All right. And so I said, let me think I'm in charge. I said, but what I will ask for is veto power.
Right.
And when we are at a place where we both are
a stalemate.
All I ask you is give me veto power. And I promise you, I will never abuse it. Right. And in 36 years of marriage, I've used it maybe 2 or 3 times.
Always related to the children.
Always related to the children. Right. Always related to the children. Everything else we got. And I learned this from my mom and dad, Rashawn. When my dad would be driving down the road, my mom would be in the passenger seat. And you remember back in the old days, they didn't have windows that had electric. And you had that one rear view mirror. You didn't have one on that side. And we riding down the street. And he said, can I get over? And my mom would roll that window down. down and stick her head out the window, and she say either yes or no. And he would take his action dependent on what she told, because they were teammates.
Right.
And they made decisions together. So I took that object lesson when we got married, said, look, you're my teammate. 9 times out of 10, when you say we can get over a cat, I'm going to listen to you because you're always in it for our best good. But that one time when we have a difference, and I know morally, this was a moral decision, not an emotional decision with my daughter, who was acting up, and her mama called and said, you got to come get her. And Dee said, no, I don't want to do it. This was a critical moral decision. I said, we got to do it. It's the right thing. I know it's hard, but we got to do it. And this is one of those times I got to use veto power. And she said, okay, once here's the big thing, Rashawn.
Oh, yeah.
Big thing. Once we said yes, she was all in.
Absolutely.
But that is with anything where once you make the decision, okay, I want to go right, I want to go left, I want A, you want B. Once you come to an agreement, you both have to be all in. So even if it didn't turn out right, I had to make sure that I had done everything in my power that I could do to make it a success, so that he could never say, well, Dee, you didn't do. No, this is a joint effort.
Right.
And we rise or fall together.
And if it had gone south, and it hadn't worked out, it didn't work out, worked out fine. But if it had gone south, I also knew she would never say to me, I told you so.
No.
Right. Right.
That I already would know that.
Nobody wants to be told I messed up.
Right.
And you told me before, and now you're going to remind me again.
Right.
That takes us to the airport story.
Right.
Oh, we have so many stories, like we missed the flight.
Right. Well,
Missed the flight.
And that was my fault.
Right.
I knew it all. I had it. I'm the traveler.
11th hour.
And I said, we'll get there fine enough time. We don't need to leave early. She keeps saying, we need to leave. I got it. We get caught in traffic. We missed the flight. And we're standing there.
And he's using all of his persuasive powers to get on the flight. The doors are closed. They're getting ready to pull back from the gate.
Right.
I say not a word.
Not a word,
right.
did you say.
Not a word.
And we eventually got a connecting flight to get us to the place where I had to speak the next morning. But
at midnight, we got in.
Where we could have been in at 6 p.m. 1
I love
hour.
her.
It took 5
I love
hours.
Dee. Look, I love Dee. But you know something?
Not a word.
She's a reminder, though. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, what she reminded me, said, I'm not saying anything. I was already big, and I was beating myself up. but I learned from that. She had my back, even when I messed up. Okay?
I want to ask you this question.
And I want to say to spouses that you can have each other's back, even when you mess up. Right. Because they know they messed up.
Yeah, they know.
They know they messed up.
I want to ask both of you this question because, because this is the part, and because my wife will go to church. I'm not a churchgoer. And one of the recommendations of the 10 points is make God an equal part of your marriage. I'm not saying it was not an equal part. And I want help with this, and I want to help my viewers and my listeners when you talk about God, because you talk about certain points that you prayed and your decisions were brought through prayer. And I want help us through that whole process when you say something like that, Dr. Jolley.
This is a principle. Now, look, what we talk about in this book are 10 principles.
Yes.
Now, we wrote our 10 principles, but then after I thought the book was finished, we went and interviewed people who were married 40, 50, 60, 70 years. And one of the things they all said was, make God an equal part of your marriage.
Right.
Now, they said that the marriage is like a triangle. It has 3 corners. This is me, this is Dee, and this is God up the top. Now, this is 33%. This is 33%, but that's only what's left is 34%, and that's God. And so he has the majority ownership of the marriage. And so he gives us these principles that work if we'll use them. Now,
so we practice the concepts that come from the Bible.
From the Bible. They're principles on marriage. Now, here's the principle. Principles work. They're bedrock. They work over and over again. If I throw this rock up, every time it's going to come down, every time. If I do it 100 times, 1,000,000 times, 10 million times, because of a principle called gravity. These principles work.
Right.
They work over time, and over time because they are bedrock principles.
Take romance. Romance is Solomon.
That's right, the Song of Solomon. So there's lots of principles, and the Bible says the bed should not be undefiled. That a brother got to get hooked up. That's what it means. That's really what it means. A brother got to get hooked up. Now, understanding the difference between sex and intimacy. Okay, women need intimacy and security. Men need sex and respect. And they are principles that are going to be all the time, because even scientific studies show that men think about sex 17 times a day on average, and sometimes before breakfast. And so we know that is the case. So what we say to married couples is understand that these principles are bedrock. They work.
They're in the Word.
They're in the Word. So we trust God through our marriage, and we run it through that prism. Everything through that
33,
prism.
33, 34.
What did God say about this? Raising kids.
How to be sweet to each other.
Yeah.
You might not say how to be those words, how to be sweet to each other, but the tenderness.
Yes.
The sucking from the breast and all that romantic stuff is in the Word.
I like that part of the Bible. Oh, praise the Lord. I like that part of the Bible.
I love y'all. Hey, Dee, Willie, I want to thank y'all, man. Please, thank you for, first of all, let me just tell you this. I listen to your show all the time on Sirius, because my show's on Sirius. And so on Tuesdays, I check it out. The beauty of who you are, man, is that we've known each other a long time.
Yes,
I've respected your relationship, your growth. The fact that I finally get to meet Dee and read about her principles, let me know why you're a great man, not an average man. You are a great man. And thank you for coming on Money Making Conversations, the C.O.O.
Thank you. Thank you, Rashawn. You're a good man. I love your show, and I love what you're doing, and your studio is awesome. Folks, go to jollymarriage.com, get a free chapter, and get some of the resources. Or go to winwithwillie.com, and you get all my websites right there, Win with Willie. God bless you. Love you much. And remember, for sure, as I say at the end of my XM show, your best is yet to come.
Your best is yet to come. Willie, Dee, thank y'all, man. If you want to hear more interviews on Money Making Conversations, please go to moneymakingconversation.com. I'm Rashawn McDonald. I am your host. Thank you.